Good afternoon. I've already lit my cigar. I got this from AutoZone. I don't think this is its intended use, but it works pretty well. I'm smoking an Oliva Serie V or 5. I don't know. Yeah. It's really yummy. And I'm drinking coffee. And that's a good combination. All right, it's Christmas Day. The children are sleeping, and I figured now is a good time to do this. All right, so the last video I made, I talked about ideological possession and the consequences of that. And someone made a comment on that video, and I don't plan on making a habit of breaking down comments that people leave, because I don't see much point in it really. But this comment in particular, I think, is a perfect illustration of exactly what I was talking about in talking about ideological possession. So I wanted to address it. I printed everything out verbatim because I think that's important in this context, so we can get everything straight and there's no confusion. Okay. To sum up what I was talking about the fact that an ideology is a belief system, the axioms of which are so broad and strict that, one, they touch every aspect of life, and two, any detail that doesn't fit into those axioms must be dismissed and marginalized. Obviously, the stricter the ideology, the more details of life are done away with. The problem has become historically when a state becomes ideologically possessed and driven to the point of totalitarianism. Those details that don't fit into the ideology are embodied as people who disagree with the agenda of the state. And what that has meant historically is that those details, those embodied details, those people who disagree, have been dismissed and marginalized by way of imprisonment and execution. So that's kind of what I was talking about. And then the whole point was that as Christians, we shouldn't fear a totalitarian state. And I wanted to illustrate the differences between the Christian ideology and a secular ideology of any kind, but specifically Marxism. The Christian ideology being one of self-sacrifice for the good of humanity and the glory of God. A Marxist ideology specifically one of self-actualization and acquisition of power over the oppressor for selfish gain, with the underpinning justification being we want the good of people, but the result is always extermination of those that don't adhere to that specific ideology. Okay, so within the video I said something that someone took umbrage with, and they left a comment. Again, this isn't my plan to do this all the time. It's probably, well, whatever. I'm gonna do it this time though. So I said, with Stalin, the details that didn't fit within his paradigm were embodied as people who disagreed with him. I'm sorry, hold on. I can't read anything without. With Stalin, the details that didn't fit within his paradigm that were embodied as people who disagreed with him were murdered. China's doing that now too. We're canceling people on Twitter, which seems inane, but it has some fairly far-reaching implications, which I think will be borne out in the future. Okay. And then the comment made as a critique to that was as follows. The connection you draw between the people who died under Stalin / the Uyghur people in the forced labor camps to cancel culture in the US is very offensive. I can see what you were trying to say, but this lazy parallel dishonors and disrespects people's actual lived experiences of suffering and death. So this is why I wanted to bring this up, because I think that that comment is a perfect illustration of what ideological possession does to not just discourse, but reason and objectivity in general. First of all, she says she knows what I'm trying to say, but if I might say so kindly, you don't know what I was trying to say. If you did, you wouldn't have made the comment, because I said what I was trying to say. And I'm not trying to be glib or whatever, but truthfully, I said what I was trying to say. We're canceling people on Twitter, which seems inane, but it has some fairly far-reaching implications, which I think will be borne out in the future. Obviously, I said that after I mentioned Stalin and what China is did do to people and is doing to people. So she's critiquing a parallel that I never made. I didn't make a parallel between cancel culture and the imprisonment and murder of people who disagree with the state. And I didn't make that parallel because that would be absurd. That would be an absurd thing to say. And if I had made that parallel, I certainly would hope someone would take me to task over it. But I made a correlation. But I did make a correlation between those two things, but not a parallel. And there's a very distinct difference, obviously. I think that censorship. Well, I know that censorship leads to is a first step on the way to ideological tyranny and ultimately mass murder. I think that's a fairly orthodox observation of history. And I don't think it's, even if it is arguable, that's not what the comment was arguing against. And it's not an original observation either. That's yummy. Tastes like chocolate. Yeah, I didn't make that up. Like, you read people and you come to understand things, and you know, that's all I did. Heinrich Heine was the guy who said, where they burn books, they will also burn people eventually. And he said that about the Nazis, who burned a lot of books and then they burned Jews. When Mao came to power in 1949, he immediately did away with any freedom of the press and any freedom of information. And the estimates of the death toll between the years between 1958 and 1962 range from 15 to 50 million people who starved to death under his communist policies, and that doesn't include the people he had killed. Under Stalin, any public comment about, or private comment actually, any comment about the ills of communism or the wealth and prosperity of the West, any trading at all in information that was contrary to the state narrative, was a sentence of death or imprisonment under Article 58. All that to say, the idea that censorship is a first step on the way to people being imprisoned and killed under a totalitarian state is, for anyone who's read their history, is the most orthodox and unsurprising proposition to make. Now, again, this is why I think that the comment itself is such a good illustration of what I'm talking about, because it does nothing to deal to it. It in no way deals with the substance of what I was saying. It calls me mean and lazy and offensive, which is a completely meaningless thing to say in public discourse. I don't even know what that means if it's not tied to a coherent objection to the point I'm trying to make. It means absolutely nothing. And I don't say that glibly. Again, I'm not trying to be offensive or combative. I'm just saying it does nothing to, if you disagree with what I'm trying to say, that's not a method by which to express that disagreement. And I'm not trying to offend my ego or something like that either. I'm not offended by being called lazy. But that manner of interaction with someone, it doesn't mean anything. So, but that's the point. So especially a Marxist ideology, but a leftist ideology, that's where it goes, at least on a private level, on a personal level. Thing is, the person that made the comment is a smart person. Like I know for a fact that she's a smart individual, an intelligent individual, but she's a leftist, and that's a leftist treatment of an idea of an idea. And I want people to engage with my ideas. I want that interaction. But again, if you're going to engage with my ideas, then engage with my ideas. I do want to know what you think about the idea that censorship leads to totalitarianism, leads to death. But to just call leftism, the leftist ideology stunts objectivity. With a Marxist ideology, it augments the lived experience of the oppressed to the extent that objective meaning, objective reason, and logic are secondary or tertiary aspects of worldview. That's why it goes so hand in hand with postmodernism, because meaning is out the window and power is all that matters. So you read something like my comment about censorship ending in murder ultimately, and that sequence of events, and you say that's offensive to the lived experience of those who suffered and died. What'd she say? The lazy parallel dishonors and disrespects people's actual lived experiences of suffering and death. So even if I had made that parallel, even if I had made the parallel, I made a correlation, not a parallel, but even if I had made that parallel, to say that it disrespects and dishonors lived experience, again, that does nothing to actually engage with the idea. It just shuts down the conversation. But that's the second reason that the comment is so perfect an object lesson for what I'm trying to say. Because even in talking about where censorship leads, like that's a method of censorship. You come across something you find distasteful for whatever reason, and you call that person mean and offensive and whatever it may be until they back off. Because and that's all in service of the ideology. Because again, with a strict ideology, you build a box around yourself and you have to eliminate anything that doesn't fit within that box. And if people making comments that you disagree with don't fit in that box, you eliminate those ideas. To the extent that potentially You just try and shut it down. So again, if you disagree with the thesis that censorship leads to ideological totalitarianism, leads to mass murder historically, and then engage with that. If you disagree with the idea that a Christian ideology differs with a Marxist ideology in the ways that I've tried to articulate, talk about that. But this doesn't do anything. And I'm not going to be bullied into quiescence. I'm going to, Anyway. All right, so I'm going to do 2 parts. I don't know if I already said that. This is part 1. I'm going to do a part 2 now. I have enough coffee. But I wanted to do that first and kind of get it out of the way. I am going to release this first part second, which I know is a little weird, but the next thing I want to talk about is Christmas and all that stuff. So I'm saving the best for last for myself right now, but for my esteemed viewership, I want to put the Christmas one out, the Christmas content out now. That doesn't make any sense. Whatever. Here's part 2.